business was so successful that it grew faster than I did. So I failed. And while failing, what happened was is I was not able to pay my fines for my car and my scooter. And 3 weeks or 1 week later, I got a fine for both unpaid fines of €350. 3 months later, €1,450. So in 3 months' time, I was about €9,000 in debt. And while trying to find the right help, the right coaching, the right network, the right supports, I wasn't able to find this. And one day I learned the only way I had to get out of my own trouble is by becoming a good entrepreneur. So when your business gets into that level where you don't know what you don't know, that's where you mess up. That's where you lose your cash. That's where you lose your relationships. That's where you lose your foundation. That's where you lose everything. And when you look a little bit at the neuroscience that's out there, some say, okay, 95% of your behavior is subconscious or non-conscious. But how do we know which part of our behavior is unconscious? And that was the hardest thing with me too, because, when I ended up in debt and couldn't get out of it, I wasn't aware that I had a belief in my brain that said, you can't get out of debt, which was a subconscious thing I got from my youth for my dad. It only was an event in 2015 that taught me that. And that gave me an alternative of how to observe myself and create an alternative for myself.
This conversation with Christiaan Oosterveen is going to blow your mind. We went so deep into his experience and the challenges that he had to face in order to become an entrepreneur. It all started from too much success and then the debt burden that almost got him to commit the suicide. Yes, we're going that deep into the conversation. He's now dedicating his whole life to helping other founders discover the master code for the mindset for success. I know you're going to love it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hi there, everyone. Okay, so we are back with the Founder's Bible for Resilience. Today we're speaking with Christiaan. I already had, I would say, probably half an hour already of conversation before hitting the record button. We couldn't stop. So I'm sure it's going to be a great episode today. So Christiaan, the floor is yours. I think the very, very first question that I'm asking you is, why are you a founder? What's your story? And why are you still a founder today?
Oh, wow, that's probably the deepest question of essence. Yeah, so thank you for having me. Okay, so here, we didn't prepare the questions. Well, let me be honest. So what for me the founder thing is that I got so frustrated with problems that I faced myself, and then over time I was able to develop my skills, and then I got to a point where I was able to solve my own problems. And it's so funny that my main business is as a founder is helping other founders too. So, and if you ask me why I'm a founder, I would say it's because I'm able to create my own reality and have total sovereignty. That will be my direct answer. The origins of why I started as a founder had all to do that my dad got replaced by the computer and that he lost his job when I was 51, which kind of happened that he lost his job. So for me, the most risky thing on earth, because I saw how it did break our family and the whole complete foundation of my parents, that actually becoming a founder was more safe than getting a job. So I actually came from trauma to become a founder, but now I became good at it.
That's crazy. My God. Well, I mean, you've wrote me a lot about your story before this conversation. I know a little bit. I'm consider that here at the Founder Bible, the main goal is not to share business success and whatever I can write on a LinkedIn post or PR. The real goal is to understand the behind the scenes of the founder's life. How hard is it? Let's have the courage to speak out loud about all of the problems that very few people have the courage to share publicly. So guide us through your story a little bit. And from there, let's move into what are you focusing on right now?
So my original story is that I actually studied hospitality entrepreneurship. And that was the thing I loved the most. And I really liked the part of business consulting. So I was always working in the beach clubs in the Netherlands. And each year we were building up the business or the beach clubs. And then in October, it's not like Italy or Colombia, is that we had to break them down. So I kind of got in my DNA already this vibe of building businesses each year. And I started to work for this Michelin star chef, and who was a hospitality consultant, and that was also the start of my first business because I won a championship in tea. That was my big dream. In we could do everything non-alcohol at a Michelin star gastronomy level with tea. And long story short, what happened is that the business was so successful that it grew faster than I did, so I failed. And while failing, what happened was is I was not able to pay my fines for my car and my scooter. And it 3 weeks or 1 week later, I got a fine for both unpaid fines of €350. 3 months later, €1,450. So in 3 months' time, I was about €9,000 in debt, and I didn't know how to get out of this. And that was the crazy thing that got me in a very dark spot. And while trying to find the right help, the right coaching, the right network, the right supports, I wasn't able to find this. And that was the cool thing too, is because one day I learned that while trying to find the right help and being in total misere and broken every area of my life, I was like, okay, the only way I had to get out of my own trouble is by becoming a good entrepreneur. And meanwhile, I learned that only 1 out of 400 founders are able to build a 10 million scale up from scratch, and that 50% is not able to make it through, if you speak about resilience, to their fifth birthday. And I knew that I had to become one. So that was my story over the last decade, is that I had to educate myself how to become one. So I created a methodology that helped me to become one. But also, what's now nice is that my current business, what we're doing now, is that we actually help founders with their founder journeys in becoming the right founder that's able to build a 10 million scale up. And what I like what you are doing, and thank you so much for that, and for creating this stage to all your followers too, is because what we really learned is that actually the real thing is the human experiences while growing through your business and getting those reflection points and learning fast. Because that was the reason why I felt my business, is because the business grew faster than I did. And that's kind of my current mission now, is to actually help founders to grow faster than their businesses, or to educate them how to slow down and pace better their growth of their business.
Amazing, amazing. So tell me one thing, Chris. What does it mean the business grows faster than yourself?
Well, the people that are in PR agencies know this best. So sometimes you can run a campaign and then your campaign goes viral. So to get specific, in my situation, what happened was is that I won this tea championship. I got national PR. I got the coolest brands hiring us for tea experiences. We were selling 100 liters of iced tea an hour. But the thing was, I had to do 3 days of festivals in a row, working 20 hours a day, and I just broke down in the operational side. And the funny thing is that despite my entrepreneurial education, and even working with the best hospitality consultants and business consultants, I wasn't trained to build the foundation, first of all as a founder, but second of all as a business owner, that was actually able to facilitate the growth that was taking place. Because when all the clients come in, it's kind of like hosting a dinner party and not having enough food, or hosting a beer party and not having enough beers. As in, people get disappointed, people run away, or you break down, and now you end up in a dark space, which happened with me because I wasn't definitely good enough to succeed the business back then. I wasn't able to find the right support, and the big problem was that my belief system was working against me, which also made me getting stuck for 2 years because I didn't open my mail when I started to end up in trouble. And that was because of a subconscious thing in my brain and by having a mindset that was fixed. So that's what I would say is in why was the business growing faster than I did, was that I got a lot of more traction and attendance than I could handle, and I wasn't able to build the foundation to facilitate that. And I wasn't
That's
even my first
crazy.
that this was the reason and that this would happen, because I was not even able to recognize what might go wrong while growing a business.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy. But so let's go back to the concept of being ready. First of all, my first question is, do you even think that you can be ready? And I believe you're basing most of your current work on getting people ready. So what does it mean for you being ready in this case? And especially why maybe the current system is not designed to make you be ready.
Ooh, okay. So remind me that I also answered the second part of the question. But so the first part is, I believe we can be ready, because for me, so it took me a decade. Let me be honest about that. Of research, validation, working with founders, working with investors, breaking down ecosystems and why we fail or why we scale. But what I would say is that for me, it's like getting a driver's license of a car. As in, what I learned, as in, so when we studied why the 1 out of 400 was actually able to have the scale up DNA and make it happen, was what I realized was they all had a minimum amount of knowledge, of expertise, of skills, of mindset and belief set. And I think it's very important to create a distinction between those two. Um, to that's minimum needed before, when you drive a car, this is what you need before you drive a car. And I would say it's exactly the same thing with before building a business. It's actually, we need to be protected against ourselves to actually get a certificate that we're good enough to succeed a business. And I would say that the current statistics are showing that that's taking place. And please remind me of the second part of the question.
So the second part would be on,
oh yeah, why we're not ready.
yeah. So the second part is, why are we not? I mean, there are plenty of accelerators, plenty of incubators, plenty of systems that, from a business perspective, appear to be offering you a solution, right, or a guide. Why is it still not effective then?
Good. Well, yes. No. Well, the answer is very simple. All these incubators, accelerators, programs, program managers, they don't understand the brain, and they don't understand the subconscious and what I call the non-conscious of the brain. So that are the hardwired ways of how the brain works and how it responds to the world and responds to experiences. But it's not able to recognize why founders not making it. So they are not able to deliver programs that actually fit founder lifestyles and founder the ways of how founders make decisions and how they work. But also what we realized, and we did a very nice presentation on this actually in 2021. It was all about how is the subconscious brain not wired to build businesses, because it's kind of, you have to act at three levels, as in, what you know, so that's your consciousness, that's where you grow your business. Like everything you know right now, that's what you're using too for building your business. And then you have this area where you know what you don't know, and that's where what you can use to ask questions to mentors or to leaders or to role models. And then the third part is that you don't know what you don't know, which is this great mystery. And that's where you break down your company. So when your business gets into that level where you don't know what you don't know, that's where you mess up. That's where you lose your cash. That's where you lose your relationships. That's where you lose your foundation. That's where you lose everything. And what I would say, what all these incubators, accelerators, and even universities, business schools are not aware of, is what is actually needed to make a founder succeed, from a founder level, but also from a program level and ecosystem level. And how do we facilitate this? And that's what I would say where we miss a lot of things. And the main reason why is because they never build a business themselves. So that's also the interesting part, is while we started to break down and reverse engineer why the scale up founders were able to build scale ups, we learned, okay, there are 5 stages of growing your startup. First, you do your research and your validation. Then you do your proof of concept. Then you find your product market fit with a business model, so how to make money. Then you make a plan on how to build your startup to 350K gross profit. And then how to build a 10 million scale up. But what most people don't know, most founders don't know, and most programs don't know, and most policymakers don't know, is that our needs and our skills and our expertise and what we need from an ecosystem changes in all 5 stages. And that's where I would say they go wrong, is that the acceleration incubators don't know their role in that 5-stage founder journey. So that's what we educate them to. And what my mission is as a founder, to improve that these incubators know, okay, this is what we can do and this is what we can't do. So please go to our colleague, so that you get sent from an incubator to an accelerator. but also that these programs are getting better in protecting founders. Because what we see, for instance, uh, with well, let me just point their name out, like Techstars. When you go to a demo day of Techstars, they get these founders get they no one is aware of what happens in the brain of a founder when you put the best tech talents, the best investors, and the best market leaders next to a person. This person gets fully overwhelmed and feels bad about itself because everyone else is better, faster. So your self-esteem drops like a rock. And that's also what happened with me when I surrounded myself with all these scale-up founders. As in, I was depressed and I felt so terrible and not good enough. And then the only thing you can do is getting into drugs and alcohol or procrastinate or do anything else in any other habits that can get you out of this stress situation. So that's what I would say, is that they are not aware in how does our program actually put founders in situations that don't work for founders.
Yeah, I would add something here, and this is my very personal experience, especially during and after COVID, in the sense that from this pressure of like peer pressure, even just opening LinkedIn, and just keep seeing crazy rounds announced and blah, 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 whatever, I actually noticed to go much more inwards. And basically, I started to be less and less social. I actually started not to go to startup events anymore, even if I was still living in the city before. And I was just totally focused on my own thing. Back then, I was like already 4 years into meditation and a couple of years into biohacking. So for me, it was just about study about myself. And everything else got almost disconnected, to the point that I actually noticed that I started to lose network, which in the end has another side effect, which is just feeling lonely.
Yes, and not being able to find help because you need to maintain your relationships. And you thank you so much for sharing that, because I would see it as like a unity or an eight, a crazy eight. So you go inward, you go outward, you go inward, you go outward. And what's so important is to manage both. And that was also that's kind of what we try to do so well with our programs and program structures and the technology that we're currently developing, because you need to find that balance of your inwards reflection, also your inwards, we call it the Project Me plan, as in who do you have to become in order to keep up with the outer world or to deliver at the right standard, but also to be able to ask help from the external world and surround the right environment and find the right tribe around you that helps you to succeed, because that's also a big point. Because what you had during your COVID times, that's what I had before Corona. But then what was interesting on my end is that I lost my business during Corona too. So I moved from the Netherlands to Portugal and I lost my full business. And then what was interesting is that was actually the starting point of scaling founders and the first beta program. But what we also recognized was that Portugal wasn't the right. So I moved to Portugal because the ecosystem was 15 years behind compared to the Netherlands, which I was like, oh, that's a great opportunity. But the irony was that because it's so behind, there was indeed a market opportunity, but I wasn't able to become the right startup from Portugal because the ecosystem wasn't able to support me. So it's exactly what you're saying. And now what I find necessary and what I hope that we can bring to the world also, but also the pain that I had was that I couldn't find the right people that was able to help me close the gap or doing this crazy eight cycle of inward and outward to facilitate me with this. So you see a lot of coaches, you see a lot of experts, you see a lot of content, or if you do this, then you get successful. But in the end, you just needed a facilitator between this eight or helping you going through the eight and making sure that the eight keeps flowing instead of getting stuck somewhere. And that's something that we believe that's important to educate anyone.
Yeah,
And especially
absolutely.
program managers, because they have to recognize this when a founder breaks down or when this eight stops flowing.
Yeah, I think another big issue that I noticed in the research and the interviews that I'm doing with the founders is that if you're not trained to recognize certain patterns, you're not able to detect where are you in the position of the eight. So you're not able to understand if yourself you're getting into burnout, you are already into burnout, and you're literally just operating in a panic mode, and nobody around you understands it. I mean, probably your wife, your spouse, your partner, your even your family, if you're still very young and you live with them.
Mhm.
But all of the key business people around you, they are either not able to understand it, or if they notice it, it's still such a taboo that nobody even tries to talk about it. And this is actually even worse because you never stop the loop, right?
You're totally right. But don't you know what the weirdest thing is what I learned was this self reflection to educate myself through YouTube. It took me years to understand this because I couldn't find the right coaches because I expect that coaches could help you with this. And you're right about the business people around you, but there are everyone discussed too, but when you look a little bit at the neuroscience that's out there, some say, okay, 95% of your behavior is subconscious or non-conscious. But how do we know which part of our behavior is unconscious? And that was the hardest thing with me too, because when I ended up in debt and couldn't get out of it, I wasn't aware that I had a belief in my brain that said you can't get out of debt, which was a subconscious thing I got from my youth for my dad. It only was an event in 2015 that taught me that, and that gave me an alternative of how to observe myself and create an alternative for myself. But it was, but I first had to end up in prison and even had to prepare my own day of actually committing suicide, because in my brain I was stuck in my world and I couldn't find a solution, and the life was so painful that actually planning an end was less painful. And
Yeah.
that's and to get back there, so what has also been interesting in, and this is what I've been planning and researching over the last 10 years, as in which part of my brain is actually the non-conscious. And a big game changer for me was this TED talk about how the brain responds to scarcity, because it kind of explains how our brain tries to survive and how our not so conscious behavior actually comes from that, because that's where your thinking leads to your feeling, leads to your actions, leads to your results, and then influences your thinking again, which is the cycle of manifestation. But then you still have to understand which of my thoughts, feelings, and actions are conscious and subconscious or non-conscious. And it all came back for me. It took me years to understand that it actually were just four fears that block everything. But it's yeah, no, but what you're doing now, or what you just mentioned, is, yeah, people are not talking about, because first of all they're not conscious. And this is what I like about burnouts, because a burnout is this point, like being a marathon runner getting injured, that you start thinking instead of doing. And now you're able to balance the duality again between the two. But it's definitely, I would say, this is the next thing of business success, and where founders will be tested if they are able to build scale ups or not. It has all to do about having that consciousness themselves.
Amazing. This is super, super, super on point. Like, let's go a little bit into how did you like what was the process for you to acknowledge and learn about these topics you mentioned about learning about the brain and so on. Is there, like, considering here I'm working on converging and merging and bridging ancient knowledge with the science, right? I'm a
Yeah.
man of science, but I did have a lot of experiences on the Asian wisdom point of view that I at the beginning I could experience immediately, but I couldn't explain. And now with
Yeah.
science, we are finally finding a narrative that somehow makes us a little bit more agreeing on it. So I'm curious, like, how did you even discover that you had this unconscious belief about not being able to get out of debt? Was it like
Uh-huh.
traditional therapy? I don't think so,
Oh,
probably.
no, 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 no. This was just being, what happened. So let me explain you what happened. This was 2013. So I lost everything. My friends, I lent money from friends to get myself out of trouble. And then I got more trouble because now I lost the relationships with my friends. My family didn't like me being in trouble. So I lost connection with them too. And I ended up total lonely. And that's how I ended up actually in getting in a suicidal state. And this is the fascinating thing about the brain, is that when we hit something painful, that's the moment that we become aware and that we now can study a principle. So everything I'm saying comes from pain. And the reason why is that I've been lucky because I've been through a lot of pain, but I've been able to, and this is the beautiful principle, what I would say that Ray Dalio speaks about, as in progress is pain plus reflection. And when I started to start reflecting a lot more, that was actually what helped me out. So no other thing. And it was a self-reflection too. And that was what happened. Well, let me first say one thing. So when I was about to commit suicide, I had everything prepared. I actually was listening to the TV to a comedian who planned it, and I was like, "That's a good idea, and please don't take this as inspiration because there is an alternative." But what happened with me is that I found that I prepared everything, and I just wanted to check my Facebook in 2013. And what happened was that I found this video on YouTube called Potential, and there suddenly there were all these quotes, and this is how I also believe that something bigger than us guides us and supports us, that showed me that actually it was possible to change, to outgrow my problems, to become better, to take action. And that made me cry for 2 weeks. But also what was fascinating was one quote which stated from Les Brown, as in, just imagine you're laying on your deathbed and imagining that you have your talents, your skills, your abilities, the ghost of these skills, talents, dreams, and abilities standing around you and looking you with large, angry eyes. And what if you die today? What dreams, abilities, skills will die, and talents will die with you? And that kind of got me. That made me understand that we live for a reason. That was my first response. But my second response was, oh, actually, if I would kill myself today, probably I have to relive this life, including all the pain and maybe even worse. And that fear actually made me work so super hard on myself. It was just fear. So that's the reason why it was the fear of having to live all this shit again. And actually solving myself and working on myself was less painful than taking all the work.
Yeah. Amen. I would say probably that's the only thing I have left to comment on this. It's crazy. My gosh. Look, Chris, tell me something about
I'm
how do you
just losing you.
manage hardship right now. So another thing that I really care to
But may
share
I add
to.
something to this too? Because
Yes,
what
of
was
course.
interesting, what was interesting is that my life. So then I started to work on myself in 2013, and I started to hide myself from the world too, because otherwise the debt collectors would find me, and I was kicked out of my house, and everything happened there. And then I finally, well, I was able to get myself back on track. I had a new girlfriend, and then I registered myself back in the registers of the local municipality, and then the police was standing in front of my door at 9:30 at night while I was watching TV with her, having a wine, having some cheese, and then the police was there. Can you pay the 9,000 euros? Which I wasn't, and then I had to go to prison. And it was so fascinating that was like for me like a holiday break that gave me a breather of thinking what's happening, because it literally was the safest place for me to be. But what was also interesting is that after it, of course, my girlfriend left because now she knew what a mess my business and myself was financially. She liked me as a person and she saw the potential I had and that I was a good person. But now she also saw the mess. So it was, a no brainer for her to run off. So while we moved together in, she took all her stuff and she was out. And but I have to confess that I literally prayed to every god I could find, as in give me a way to help myself. And where I made the promise that if I figure it out, I will pay it forward. So that also answers your first question: why am I a founder? Is like building the technology and the business that's able to pay this forward at a large scale. That's the mission that I now am completing as a thank you for all the support that I've had over the last decade myself.
Okay, let me make a quick break from the show to explain you why this project came alive. 6 months ago, I started interviewing founders to understand what were the secret sauces for their success. But even more importantly, I was curious to understand how much pain they had to go through in order to achieve their dreams. I've been an entrepreneur myself for the past 10 years, and I know exactly how painful this journey is, but very few people are actually willing to talk about it. And that's exactly what we're doing at the Founders Bible for Resilience. We're finally breaking the toxic hustle culture behind startup life. I'm on a mission to build a new generation of founders. Founders that can leverage ancient wisdom and science for true long term peak performance and longevity. If you want to be part of this movement, then check out wholegrainwisdom.com and join us now. Okay, now back to the show.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, you're connecting to the last question that I have for you, which is when it comes to support systems and how do
Yeah.
you get what did you learn throughout all of this process, how to be focused, how to keep at peak performance, how do you balance your health for the body, for the mind, for your emotions, for your soul, and so on. Like what is currently your, if we can call it like that, your secret sauce, let's say, for peak
Sure.
performance?
Well, mainly weekly reflection, 8 areas. So our brain thinks linear, and the hard thing is to find balance between relationships, health, everything. So I found the answer with the wheel of life, and this is what I've been using myself to, and where most coaches are using it just once a month or once everything. What we do with all founders and what I use as my secret sauce myself, it's doing this every week or every week. When you're in trouble, just weekly reflection in the 8 areas of your life, and each week making a vision for the 8 areas of your life, and then also taking 3 actions a week to improve the 8 areas of your life. So that's what I would say from a personal perspective as a founder, and where how to the secret sauce. So your brain only focuses on 3 or 4 areas of a wheel of 8 areas, and by focusing on all eight, what's cool is that now you start recognizing the connections between all these areas of why is my personal finance not good, because my relationship is bad, because my health is bad. So now you start recognizing the cause and effect, where to make the most progress. And then secondly is that I've been able to translate this, and this is a premiere for you, is that because we're going to launch this year the wheel of startup, that we're also doing the same thing for the 8 areas of how to build, manage, and develop your business, and to actually measure if your business is ready for the next level of growth or the next promotion or marketing campaign. So you're able to recognize when not to grow because you're growing faster than you do, or to know, let's go inwards, let's work on myself, get to the right stage, and now I succeed my business, or I get myself first fit enough to do it. To give you a funny example, is that I knew that my business now this year would go through Europe. So I got myself last year a dog, so that I could travel with my dog all over Europe. So I'm not lonely on my personal lifestyle. And I've been working for 2 years on getting the life and the business that I was able to have a dog and to get a car to drive through Europe. So all this life design, that's what I started with the wheel of startup, and also with the wheel of life, as in what's the business that fits the lifestyle, or what lifestyle is needed to succeed my business in the next stage to fulfill my promise. So that's my secret sauce.
Super, that's super interesting. uh
If I may add one thing to this, is
of course.
some topic that's because the self reflection in the 8 areas helps you to. It's like a mirror. It kind of gives you a wheel, literally like driving a car, to recognize, okay, where am I in my health, where am I in all 8 areas. But also, what's interesting is when you keep doing it every week, you start recognizing how actions are improving areas, or actually breaking down areas, because now you spend so much time with your new loved one that your business falls apart, for instance, or that your clients are not happy. So you start recognizing this, which is good because now you are able to anticipate. But also, what I started to do is what we call time blocking. So what I really started to do was every Sunday I look at my upcoming week, and I started to manage my time, as in which days I'm focusing on which time blocks, including dating your girlfriend or your boyfriend, because you need your lover when you get in trouble. Because I tell you, you get in trouble while being in business, or you make mistakes yourself, or the external world makes it tough with wars, pandemics, all that things, or you just, yeah. people run away, things will happen. So that's where I would say always take care of your family and your friends, because they are the ones that you can sleep when you can't pay your own bed and breakfast yourself.
Yeah, and this is so true. Over the all of the stories of the second, third, fourth time exited funders that I've interviewed so far, they all told me exactly the same story. Like, for them, the very, very basic root of a super system is their family, has been their family, because they always knew that even if they went super bankrupt, they could still do whatever and just go back to the garage, go back to their teenager room, and at some point have a place to sleep.
It's so
It's
true. No,
crazy.
it's so true. It's so true, because it's like I tell you, like I had to beg for 20 euros for having nights in hostels. And the good thing what you have with family is, like, mom's love always works. There's always food and a bed, and it gives you time to figure yourself out, to figure your business out, to get yourself back on track. That's also why I believe that no one should take money from friends and family, but always say, would you invest in me? Please make a reservation for that money for when I'm in trouble, because that's the money I need to lend to get myself back on my feet. But that's what worked against me. So that's what. And maybe I would also suggest another two secret sauce principles is always find role models for who lives life on your terms and who reached goals on your terms, and only listen to their advice. So when you're a founder, never listen to any expert that never built a business themselves and never reached the results that you're looking for. So that's that's definitely one of the other things that I would say that yeah, that's important. And of course, keep reflecting on where you're coming from, but also keep educating to others, because like me now sharing my knowledge with you, it also makes me rethink my truth and what makes me work. And by so this is what I call the 33% rule, as in spend 33% of time with people who are where you want to be, so you get inspired and you know how to do it and you see it's possible. It really creates good thing, but also that slows down your self-esteem. So then spend 33% of time with your peers that are in the same stage as you, so you know that you're just human living human experiences, and you just have a beer and you use some humor and some, I would call it startup comedy, and get some inspiration, make some love, and get back on the track. And then you have the 33% of paying forward your knowledge, wisdom to the ones that are going through your journey and that are kind of following in your footsteps. Because while you start educating and mentoring to others that are in the stage behind you, that's where you actually learn what you think is true and what worked for you, if there really is a principle that works for everyone in any situation. And that also improves your own knowledge and makes you better again, which makes you a better founder again, that becomes more successful again.
Yes, it's all about community. I agree completely. Well, thanks so much, Christian. It's been an amazing conversation. I don't think I have other questions for you. Probably we
Yes,
could
my
have
pleasure.
other 3 or 4 podcasts in the future about even farther and deeper topics on the nature of the mind and
I
so on.
hope
I know
so.
that
Well,
you also.
yes, no, I will definitely send everyone to you too, because I think it's important for people to learn, and I know how hard it was for me to find podcasts or YouTube series, because I've learned everything from YouTube to and now ChatGPT does a good job too as a coach or a mentor, but to find knowledge or wisdom that at least is 80% right. But yeah, thank you so much for having me here, and very happy to contribute anytime soon.
Amazing. Thanks, Chris. To the next time.